I haven't been out. I'll be honest, in SoCal, I haven't been outside yet, but I'm pretty sure knowing SoCal in the summer, it's pretty sunny out here too. Okay.
Yeah,
Lot
in
of
Seattle. In Seattle, we treasure these moments when we can get them.
brilliant. Looks like we have a lot of people who are joined in. Folks, just remember, feel free to chat, throw some comments, questions out there, and we'll get started. Oh, where is Ken? Okay. Gene, if you could help enabling chat. I don't know if chat is enabled for the attendees, so they can chat, they can ask questions throughout the format. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm just seeing where. Yeah, it looks like they're able to.
Okay, fantastic. Can hear everybody. Let's get the well, let's get the ball rolling while we wait. I'm sure Ken will join in. I'll take a stab at introductions for everybody. So, first of all, welcome to everybody for joining our webinar today. We're going to be talking about getting your first job in tech. We have a great group of panelists here. I'll introduce them in a second, but I'll be your host. My name is Adil. Hey, Ken. Uh, Obviously, the focus of this conversation is for those early in their tech journey, but I think the experienced folks, especially folks. Oh, missed the recording. Okay, let me start over. So, welcome to our webinar on getting your first job in tech. I am your host today. Obviously, the focus today is on folks in their early journey in tech, but I believe experienced folks are going to get a lot out of it, especially those entering the job market after a long time. So, stick around and feel free to ask any questions in the chat. We will hear from the panel in a second, but I just want to let everybody know after we've done the second half of this conversation, after we're done with the conversation on getting first job in tech, we will do a resume review. So if you are interested in resume reviews, get your resumes ready. You can ping me in chat during our conversation today, and in the order it's received, I will have people promote you to panelists, or you can share your screen and you can get feedback from the panel on your resume. So without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panel. And I'm subbing in for Evgeny today. He's out of station, but still in the background helping us out. So first up, George Andros, ex-Apple, ex-Amazon, QA, DevOps, you name it, he's done it all. If you have questions about interviewing, he's the go-to person, but in his spare time, he also loves to talk about the great outdoors and cycling. So next up, we have Ken Fury. What can I say about him? Product leader, held every single title there is in the product world, entrepreneur as well. He is my go-to if I need anything, if I want to know what's going on in big tech companies all the way down to startups. So thank you, Ken, for joining the party today. And last but not least, Eugene Polonsky, uh, engineering manager at Amazon, IMDb, ex Adobe, ex Microsoft, ex Apple. So much to say about him, but let's hear directly from him as to getting your first job in tech.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adil. Let's see. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me guys know if you can see that. Awesome. All right. So we prepared a little bit of a presentation for you guys about how to break into tech, and like Adil says, for folks more experienced who are having trouble getting in, we'll have some ideas for you as well. So essentially, on our agenda today, we'll talk about why the tech market is the way it is right now, what's creating all this difficulty. We'll talk about different approaches to getting that interview. How you can even go an interview. Essentially, we'll talk about ways of preparing for an interview, and we'll also provide some hints about how to pass the interview. And then finally, we'll talk about a program that we are actually putting together to kind of help streamline this whole process. So let's start. So first problem, no interviews. This is kind of what we hear from our clients over and over again. Like resume reviews are important, they're great. Interview coaching is wonderful, but can't even get interviews. You're sending resumes one after another for months at a time and nothing, just ghosting. So the question is why? Well, the first problem is the resume screening tools, right? So it's the applicant tracking system. And essentially, like I think many of you probably know about this, but basically, it weeds out the majority of resumes that are sent for a particular rec before the resume even gets to a human being, right? So it's looking for basically keyword matches on your resume against the job description, and there are a lot of tools that can kind of help with that. The second problem is that we all know, especially larger companies have laid off thousands and thousands of people, right? So the market is essentially flooded with more senior, more capable talent. That's making it very difficult to kind of stand out. Um, Ineffective application methods is another big reason. So we've all been taught over our decades of experience to you see an application, you apply for the job, you send in your resume, you wait for a recruiter to contact you, right? And that's just not working anymore. Like that way of applying is just no longer relevant. And then finally, recruiting has also suffered a lot of layoffs. Like if you talk to recruiters in the industry, they'll tell you that a huge percentage of their coworkers have been laid off. So what that has meant is, especially for larger companies, if there are recs that are being open and there are less recruiters to service those recs, it means the candidate experience drops, right? It means like recruiters just don't have the time to devote the kind of attention to candidates that they used to. So, that's where a lot of the ghosting is coming from. There's just not enough recruiters to go around. And of course, all of this is exacerbated even worse for early career candidates, right? Like folks who are bootcamp grads or career switchers or fresh college grads. Because as a hiring manager, right, there is a very simple calculus here, right? I could take a chance on a newer graduate or an earlier career person and hope that they wind up being the diamond in the rough and, pay them a little bit less. Or I could take an experienced person, one of the many, many that we've discussed have been laid off, and pay them a little bit more, but at least like they're proven, right? I know what I'm getting. So for hiring managers, unfortunately, like it's sort of a no-brainer, right? And that's what's making it so difficult for early career candidates to break in. So I'd like to open this up to the panel now. Like, what are you guys seeing? What else are your thoughts? Maybe Ken, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. It's a kind of a deadlock going on out there where there are far too many candidates. Every hiring manager is absolutely flooded. There's like an average of 150 applicants per job. And you can imagine for the more attractive jobs that actually let you work remotely, the number is much higher. I'm hearing horror stories like that from a lot of colleagues at various companies, particularly companies whose names you know. It's a very difficult situation for the hiring manager as well as for all the applicants. So I think it requires a different strategy, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But any thoughts, George?
Yeah, I hear from a lot of people who are working really hard, who've went to boot camps, schools, paid a lot of money, spent a lot of time, and are just having a really hard time being found. Even just getting recognized by recruiters is one thing, and then getting past interviews with very high competition. It's really rough out there, and there's just one story after another. So, my heart really goes out because a couple of years ago, this was not an issue. You'd graduate with a CS degree, you're almost guaranteed not just a good job, a great job. And even smaller companies were competing for candidates, and the market's really turned. I'm hoping this is just temporary, but it's becoming harder and harder to weather the storm the longer the storm goes on.
Yeah, and the silver lining, there is a silver lining to all of that. There are jobs out there. This competition is high. So what are you doing to set yourself apart, set yourself up for success, right?
Right. Well, let me carry on into some thoughts about how to do better as a candidate, how to figure that out. Let's see. There we go. Sharing. Did that work?
Yep.
Okay. And that's the whole point, is standing out. There's a whole universe. I mean, when you apply for a job, you're now applying for against many people out in the world, and there's not a lot of local requirements anymore. Since COVID, things have changed up significantly. So how do you actually be the one that gets noticed? That's really the trick. And that may be the way that you can help to shortcut yourself through the line. One of the key ways is to actually contribute to open source. It's actually critical. There's a lot of hiring managers who pay attention, especially if it happens to be in a technical function area that's adjacent to the things they do. So, yeah, pick somebody who you think you'd like to work with and see what they're interested in and excited about it. Most of them are socially aware, technically aware, and they'll notice when things are occurring around them where some person comes out of nowhere and drops some pretty interesting code into open source. Volunteering and freelancing, like using something like Upwork, anything you can do to gain experience that goes just beyond, hey, I got a degree or I graduated a boot camp. Um, Being able to actually point at, here is something I built, and they get permission to actually share that too is critical. That actually puts you above a significant percentage of the candidates. My favorite, networking. I hate networking, but I have to admit it works. If you know somebody at a company and that company has a job opening, even though the person's not the hiring manager, right? And I've done this a few times. Reach out. It's like, hey, if you're going to get a referral bonus, why don't you refer me? And I promise not to embarrass you. And it's bypassing an entire enormous queue, hundreds of resumes and applications that have stacked up, not enough HR to go through it and screen it all. But suddenly, somebody they trust, somebody they currently work with, wanders over and drops this on their virtual desktop and says, hey, I've worked with this person in the past, and I can actually vouch for her. She's done a great job with the work that I've seen. There's no better way to actually get past the enormous queue of individuals. And networking goes beyond just using a reference. There's other ways to make yourself visible, such as personal projects. I like to write articles, and it's always amazing me when I apply for jobs or when I'm talking to somebody that people have read it. It doesn't have to be writing for you, but if you're actually going to go on a learning journey, you're going to learn how to code and React. Great. Well, get yourself a YouTube channel and document your learning journey, because that's interesting. It's a real story. It's a beginning and an ending. Here's where we started. Here are the struggles I had. A lot of people will actually find that to be fascinating. But don't double think any of this stuff. Take the chance and get your name out there. Be in front of the people that have an opportunity to hire you. So, guys, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah, I think there was a good question from Alexei about do referrals still work in big tech? And I think it kind of depends on the type of referrals. For example, at Amazon, we have an internal site for referrals where I go, I fill out the candidate's name. I also indicate whether I've worked with the person or not, and any feedback that I might have if I have worked with the person. This latter type, where I have worked with the person, is going to be more effective, no question, right? If I'm simply referring somebody without any knowledge of their professional experience, then maybe not as much. But the best kind of referral is going to be, hey, I know there is a rec open in my sister team, right? Let me talk to the hiring manager and tell them about you. That type of referral is still as golden as it always has been.
Yeah, I'll chime in here as well. Referrals still work. I actually got a job with a through a referral, and it was a random referral. So a lot of people are applying to a certain position. I reached out to someone who worked at the company in that team and on LinkedIn, and I was just very brief and honest. I said, "Hi, you don't know me, but can I ask a favor?" I sent on my resume. I said why I think I'm a good fit for the position. They referred me, and that's how I got noticed and got the position. I'd also say about networking, I don't think people do this enough, and it's not that hard, especially when you're just starting out in your career. I'd recommend reach out to a senior person, doing the job you want to get, even if it's not at the company you want to, work at or the one you're applying for, but just reach out to a very senior person and say, "Hi, I'm trying to break into this industry. Do you have 15 minutes? Can I buy you a coffee? I'd love to hear from you about your experience and what it's like to do this job." And you'll be surprised. There's a lot of people who are in very senior positions who would love to give back, would love to give you the wisdom that they wish they had when they were in your position. And do this to several people. Not everyone's going to respond. The really great ones are really busy doing a great job at their work, but I promise you it's worth it. You'll make a friend, you'll learn a ton, and you'll get some networking, right? And it really doesn't hurt. It helps you the most to get that experience from someone who's been in your shoes, who's been in that path, and they're going to direct you in the right way to go. So you utilize this. We're very blessed to have something like LinkedIn where you've got access to that professional network. So definitely take advantage of that.
The other thing worth mentioning on the networking front is guess what happens when you contribute to OSS? You network, right? And the reason why is every OSS project has its maintainers, right? And has a core group of folks who are regularly contributing to it. So as soon as you begin to contribute on a regular basis, you are networking with those folks, right? And so you are very quickly growing your personal professional network amongst high visibility people, right? Like assuming that you're contributing to high profile projects, which you should be, you're growing your visibility amongst a large crowd of folks.
Yeah, even just commenting on someone else's project or asking good questions will actually get you noticed, and it will help to elevate you.
Yep. Cool. So let's talk a little bit then about, let's say that you've been following our advice, and let's say that you're beginning to get some interview hints or like some interview hits, invites to an interview. How do you actually prepare? Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about interview preparation. So generally, there are two types of interview questions, right? Technical and behavioral, or also known as situational. So for technical questions, the internet is actually flooded with awesome prepare materials, right? Grind 75 and Educative's Grind 75 class are really good to kind of get through the core set of types of problems that you're likely to be asked. There is a site called techinterviewhandbook.org, which is a great study resource for these Grind 75 problems as well, right? They kind of walk you through the problems from easy to hard, and you just practice. Algo Expert is great for system design. So essentially, they have a bunch of problems or sample problems like design Airbnb or design Prime Video, and they'll walk you exactly through how to approach this type of problem, exactly how to break it down, and how to come up with the final design. And then, of course, there's LeetCode, HackerRank, like all of those sites. I personally don't find them quite as useful as a more structured approach, but I know a lot of folks do. For behavioral questions, and these are questions like, tell me about a time when you blah, 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 like went above and beyond to deliver a project on time, or, there's a huge amount of those kind of questions. Weekly webinars, we actually run weekly webinars Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Generally talking about those and doing mock interviews for folks. One-on-one coaching can also be really effective, but essentially it's practice. So what about you guys? Do you have other thoughts on ways to prepare?
I think on preparation, one thing that one kind of idea that stands out is usually And this is the crowd, where a lot of people are trying to break into the tech, or um, if you're focusing on junior positions, is you have a leg up if you are doing these things, right? If you're interviewing at a company that does have uh, and algorithms and other coding kind of challenges, you have a leg up on folks who are perhaps more experienced, but who haven't done that. I'm not going to get into the right or wrong of those algorithm questions, those coding questions, but it is a way for companies to figure out who to hire and not to hire. So definitely follow on Eugene's advice.
You gain a lot when you do these things too. I went on Algo Expert, and because I've been interested in system design as a product guy, it's not really going to overlap that much with the things I do. But all my career, I've been listening to technical conversations and discussions, arguments, and going through that course. It was really a light in a dark room. It was amazing how much of that stuff just became clear and made sense to me. And I can interview better now because of that, even if it's not specifically on system design questions.
Awesome. George, any final thoughts?
I think you guys covered a lot of it. Yeah, you guys are really great at this. So I'll chime in a little bit later.
Awesome. Great. So let me move the ball forward. Let me share my screen here first. All right. Let's see. How am I looking?
Looking
Okay.
great.
Brilliant. So, tips and tricks. One thing, I was talking to Eugene just yesterday and looking at an article, right, saying like ChatGPT can solve 84% of lead code problems. Um, and if you have these, if and technical interviews come in different flavors, but if you have that, what are ways you differentiate yourself from AI? Because ultimately, these companies want humans to work on their projects, not necessarily AI, right? So follow, I'll come back to that theme and connect the dots there. Let's see here. I think the first and foremost really important part of any technical interview, whether it's a coding exercise or a system design interview or anything else in between, asking clarifying questions. Um, so important. I'll give you a very good example of it. If you haven't flushed out all your constraints in your mind, you can take a lead code problem that might be easy and turn it into a hard, right? You miss that constraint about, hey, this is a sorted versus unsorted list. It can put you back. So really take your time, ask clarifying question, understand constraints, and you'll also see the theme. It's a you're solving a think of it in terms of you're solving a problem with somebody else, as opposed to just hunkering down and focusing on just solving the technical problem. Next up, thinking out loud. Again, this is something else that differentiates you from ChatGPT. You can put in a problem in ChatGPT and it can spill out a bunch of text. Um, and I've actually I've actually spoken to somebody where that's happened to them, where they're interviewing somebody, they don't know, and then suddenly you have a solution, right? And they can't really talk through it. So how do you approach this? You're talking through and explaining your reasoning why you're doing something, showing your problem solving approach by having that conversation. I will say that thinking out loud is not something we all usually do at work, right? We don't do that. So this will take practice. So I suggest, taking the suggestions from earlier from Eugene that you are practicing with somebody else, and hopefully you're also practicing thinking out loud and speaking about what you're doing as you're going along and doing it. And this also ties into this second part. This next part ties into the first part because it's okay to ask for guidance in interviews, especially if you come up with something and you're completely blocked. Um, your natural instinct might be to just shut down and say, I failed this interview. You're better off asking your interviewer for help or guidance. Again, this applies to both coding interviews and design interviews or any other type of technical interview question. Request guidance, stay on track. There may be some points deducted for how much help you're receiving, but in general, asking questions, requesting guidance is a good place to start. So I would highly recommend, when you get into a state where you're stuck, just come back to this. Seek hints, request guidance. Debug thoroughly. This is an important one. Now, especially when you're doing coding interviews, you might be doing it on just a notepad versus you're doing it on on a platform where you're able to execute code. Regardless of what you're doing there, my biggest tip here is if you find your own mistake or a bug that you have in your code, it's not going to get counted against you. So it pays to be very thorough, identifying errors, correcting any mistakes. The other thing I'll say here is really important as well, and it ties into just speaking through what you're doing, is if you're doing a coding interview like on a notepad, at the end, practice walking through specific examples. Like if you have, take an array and do this, walk through an example. Here's a sample array, there's 4 to 5. There are 3 numbers in this array, and step through your code. You'll likely find issues in your code doing that. And you'll also be helping and demonstrating to the interviewer that this person is like really, this person is thorough and they can walk through their own logic and they understand what they just wrote. So very helpful. Last but not least, demonstrating confidence, eye contact. If you need to put a sticky note on your webcam, look here. Even if it's a remote interview, you can make your interviewer feel connected to you. Engaging interviewer is part of that confidence, right? You're asking questions. And this one, obviously, it's okay. Like to me, when I think, I like to think I'm looking away, right? That's just natural to me when I am speaking to somebody, even face to face. But it's even more awkward during an interview. Obviously, you do you a little bit. Just be aware that what things help and what things can hurt you when you are doing some of those things. So some of those thoughts there. And with that, what else?
Okay.
Eugene, you had some interesting thoughts there, right?
Yeah, I had one thought that might be worth sharing. So for me, the biggest shift in my interview experience was when I changed my mindset to not think about interviews as an interrogative experience and think of them as a collaborative experience. In other words, when I first started interviewing as an early career, I always thought about going to an interview with a sense of dread. Like the interviewer is going to ask me questions and I'm going to have to answer them, and it's going to be super scary, right? And I had some spectacular fails early on because of that kind of attitude, right? Because basically, as soon as I felt myself unable to answer the question, I would just shut down, right? Okay, I failed, right? But when I managed to switch my point of view to a collaborative experience, in other words, the interviewer is not asking me questions. We are solving a problem together, right? As soon as I managed to shift my mindset to that, now I can start asking for clarifying questions. Now I can start asking for hints if I'm stuck, right? Like now we can kind of engage in a more brainstorming type collaborative interaction. And that is way more positive, believe me, for the hiring manager too, right? Way more positive of an experience. As an interviewer, I hate just sitting there and like having to fire questions at the candidate and try to drag information out of them. Like that's no fun for me. And it's not going to create very good interview feedback either. Now, if the candidate can engage me in a collaborative conversation, that's way better.
I can tie on to that too. I just like to remember that taking a mindset as you go into an interview of understanding, look, it's not just about how rapid or how effective you are at writing code. That's one aspect of it. But engineering managers want to understand your thinking process. How do you approach problems? How do you tear them apart? How do you make yourself the owner of these problems, how would you be to be a teammate of the people that the hiring manager is working with? They need to evaluate that, and I would argue that's even more important than superb skills on the coding front. And one other thought, this is also building a relationship. I knew some people who have had very good interviews and didn't get the job, but ended up getting called back by that same hiring manager because the interviews were fun and engaging and useful. And they found jobs at other parts of the company, made referrals. People actually got that work, which is really great. So it's your opportunity to shine and be a human, not a chat GPT.
Yeah, I'll add some things here as well. I think there's a lot of really good tips about interviewing. There's a lot, but I'll give you some of the top ones that I find are most useful for people when I help them with interviews. Um, One is prepare your stories and know them really well. So this is specifically for behavioral interviews. You need to come prepared with 3 to 5 stories where you are the absolute hero. You know a story really well. It's about a past experience, and you have a lot of details, and the results are just really good. It puts you in a good light. And when you know a story that well, the really cool thing about this is you can use one story to answer multiple different types of questions, right? Like a question like, tell me an achievement you're proud of. Tell me about a difficult situation, a difficult technical problem you had to solve. Tell me a time you influenced someone. One story could answer all of those questions if it was one where you influenced someone, where it was a hard problem, a technical thing that you had to overcome. So have a few of these in your arsenal, prepare them, know them well. It makes a huge difference than trying to think of a situation off the top of your head.
Yeah,
Another,
actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, George.
well, go ahead if you got something on that.
No, I was just going to say that's actually the next section we're going to talk about.
Okay.
The
Well,
behavioral interviewing.
I'm a mind reader. Uh, well, since you mentioned confidence, though, I think this actually makes a big difference. I wouldn't underestimate confidence. So when someone speaks confidently, you tend to trust what they're saying more. If someone, even if they're saying, the right things, but they seem shaky or they're not sure themselves, you tend to just agree with them and doubt them. So having that confidence, I think, is also huge. The one thing I tell people is you are already doing that job. You work at this company, you've been doing this job for a while, you know the product, the customer. Answer from that point of view, right? Don't be a complete outsider, someone who's a complete newbie. Just in your mindset, you should already put yourself in that position. And instead of being grilled, you are someone who their experience is being sought after by the interview. And I think changing that perspective makes a huge difference. Finally, when we talk about eye contact and just kind of your body language, that also makes a big difference. One thing that really helps is recording yourself, seeing what it's like, when you're being seen, especially through a virtual lens. And when I did this, I realized that when I think, I usually look up to the left, and then everyone gets to look up my nose. It's not very good. It's not flattering. And I try to stop doing that. I used to have a sticky note that says look down in the place I used to look when I think. So now I still think. I just try not to look so far away and tilt my head up. So it's just something I didn't realize I was doing. But if you record yourself, during an interview, especially if you could do that, if that's okay with the interviewer, but just even you answering questions by yourself, you'll see kind of what you look like, and having positive body language affects your mindset. And goes a long way.
Yeah, just remember that if you are recording during an interview, you do need to get interviewers' permission, right? Because most states are two-party consent states. So if you're recording without their knowledge, you're actually, other than the fact that the company may find, like if the company finds out that would be a problem, you are actually breaking the law. But there are also a lot of good AI-based tools that can help you with this as well. Like, for example, there is a tool called Poised, and I know there's a bunch of others that let you record yourself and provide you even real-time feedback on, for example, your filler words like your ums and your likes and so on, the degree of confidence, the degree of energy you're speaking with. So it's great to use those kind of tools to practice your delivery and get it as effective as possible. But let's actually move. George, thank you for queuing up the behavioral interview part. That's actually the next thing that we wanted to chat about a little bit. And I think George put this really, really well. So you need to have a story bank, right? That is the first and most important thing. That's really important to create when you go into an interview. And actually, Amazon, for example, recommends having 10 to 15 stories, right? So these are incidents from your experience that speak to potentially multiple different interview questions, right? So, as George mentioned, a question like, tell me about a time when you went above and beyond to deliver a project on time. Tell me about a time when you disagreed with your manager, right? Tell me about a time when you did something you were not expected to do to bring a project back on track, so on and so forth. So the point is the same story can work for multiple questions, depending on how you talk about what you did. And we'll talk about that in a second. But you also don't want to repeat the same story in a single interview loop. In other words, if you told this story to person A, do not tell the same story to person B, right? Choose a different story. So that's why having 10 to 15 stories that you can easily adapt to different questions is super, super important. I've had interviewees actually come to my interviews with a printed out cheat sheet, right, of their story bank, right? And when I ask them a question, a behavioral question, they'll say, give me a second. And they'll open their cheat sheet and they'll actually look at, it's not the full story that's recorded there. It's just like one page with story headings, but that can be a really great way to kind of remember what your story bank is. And then once you have the story heading, you should know the story well enough to be able to tell it all the way through without having to remember details and, without getting fuzzy on details. So that's super important. In terms of story delivery itself, the best way to do this is to use the STAR format. That's the situation, task, action, result, right? And situation is essentially context. And that often, it's going to be very brief. And it's often going to be in the form of, 6 months ago when I was working at Acme Corp, we were working on financial recording software. And I was asked to implement a feature to be able to import financial records from QuickBooks, for example. That's it, right? That's your situation. And that's actually also your task, right? I was asked to implement the feature. That's the task, right? The bulk of the story, 80% of it, is going to be focused on actions, which is what are the exact things that you did for this story, right? I scheduled a meeting with these people. I convinced them to go this route rather than that route. I implemented the following set of, I created a design document. I implemented the majority of the feature, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever your role was, as applicable to the task that you had mentioned, those are the actions you took. And those are the actions that you can adapt a little bit depending on the question being asked, right? Usually a story is going to have actions that pertain to multiple different questions. So if a question is asked, for example, tell me about a time when you really grew a junior developer, when you helped a junior developer grow, right? Let's take that financial records story as an example. You could really focus on, and I really worked with Bob. He was my colleague on the story. I really worked with him and kind of did a lot of his code reviews, and I helped him with the design doc that he was creating, and so on and so forth. So you would focus on that. But if the question was, tell me about the time you went above and beyond, you might not even mention Bob, right? You might talk about a different part of what you did within that story that answers that question. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the final thing is you really want to focus on metrics-based results, right? So it's not sufficient to just say, we delivered the story, right? Or we delivered the feature. No, we delivered the feature 10% before the deadline, or we increased customer, with the delivery of this feature, we increased customer NPS scores from 7 to 9. Or this thing that I developed decreased the time to deploy in our CI/CD pipeline from 4 hours to 2 hours. So basically, you want to have specific metrics in your results. And the results are super important. That's the icing on your cake, right? That is the outcome that you, the hero of the story, have achieved. So make sure that you have those results. I've had candidates who I've had to drag those results out of, right? Like they'll talk about all the actions they did, then they just kind of peter out. And then I have to go, so what happened? Right. And don't make me do that. Right. Just tell me what the result was. It's way more effective. So let me turn it over to the panel now. What do you guys think? What else can you suggest?
I think just like anything else we've talked and spoken about so far in interviewing, practice, practice, practice. None of this comes naturally to anybody. Like nobody ever told me I was a natural interviewer. It took practice, and I'm sure it's a similar kind of example in this group. So don't think if you feel somebody is better than you at something, especially when it comes to interviewing, it's not something that came naturally to them. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, I'll add to this. I think Eugene gave probably the top tips when it comes to how to answer these type of questions. So I won't repeat any of that, but I would just say go back and watch it again. um, but a few additional things is when you practice this really well, you often can adapt a story kind of on the fly because sometimes interviewers will throw questions that you don't expect at you. So really know these well. But what if you do get asked a question that you don't know? I always say, take a moment, breathe. Interviews are, people get nervous during interviews. It's normal. But buy yourself a little bit of time. We talked about asking clarifying questions. You could do this for behavioral questions, right? Often they're very ambiguous. Tell me about achievement you're proud of. If you're kind of freeze, if you're not prepared for that, you can say, do you mean professionally? Right? Because I'm really proud of a lot of personal achievements also, right? So that puts you in a good light, right? You achieve a lot of personal things in your life, but it gives you a little bit of time to just get that yes from the interviewer. Of course, it's going to be an obvious yes, but it gives you time to think. Also, take down some notes. I'm a visual person. I don't have a great memory, so I take a lot of notes. And I say this up front. When I'm asked a question that I just need to think through, I'll say, great question. Can I just get 30 seconds? I try to think before I talk. I'm just going to take a few notes and be very genuine. Spend 30 seconds, write down just a few words in the order that you want to say it, put it in whatever order you want. And then don't read from your notes. Look at the camera and answer genuinely. You'll be amazed at how much those 30 seconds really help in formulating your thoughts. A lot of people, when they answer a question, they'll start down a path and then they'll go back and remember something that's really important to the context. And they'll say, oh, yeah, wait. Because your interviewer is also taking notes. And the less they have to go back and change their notes, the easier their notes are going to be. And it just flows really well. So think before, give a thoughtful answer that's chronological, that just makes sense. But also, I'd really caution against reading because it's so easy to Google something or use ChatGPT. So if you're reading line by line, that's kind of a dead giveaway that even if you're not cheating, it just looks like you are. So don't do that. But do whatever worked for you. If you like paper and pen, use that instead, and they can see you writing. Awesome. Finally, I'd also say being ready with material is great. I had someone interview at Amazon once who came in with a piece of paper printed out with Amazon's leadership principles. And this gentleman had notes after every one about how he exemplifies each one of these principles. I didn't listen to all of them, but that was so impressive that he prepared so much for this interview. We ended up hiring him not just because of that, but he did really great in the interview. But that just showed that he cared, he was dedicated, he worked hard just for this one interview and made a big difference. So those are additional tips that I would give. Anyone else have something to say?
I think you guys did great. You've highlighted almost everything I would have said.
Cool. George, I think you have the next section.
Yeah, let's do this. Let me share my screen now. All right, can you guys see that? Thumbs up. Yeah, cool. Now let's talk about the flip side. What's it like from a hiring manager's perspective? I've been a manager over 10 years in the tech industry. I've done over 1,000 interviews, hired over 100 people. I've been through it a lot. And there's definitely some pain, especially now. We've talked about how the market's flooded. So many resumes. The average job opening in multiple different industries gets about 250 applicants. And that was a few years ago. So in tech, it's even more, and now it's even more. So hiring managers got a stack of resumes to look through. Can't possibly go through all of them. We have to use a lot of criteria to just filter through them. But even then, it's a pain. And resumes come in all different shapes and sizes. They don't always represent who the candidate really is. So that's just the first step. And then comes the interview. And finally, through the funnel, it's not just the resume, but going through screens and then on-sites. Very few candidates actually reach the final stage or get an offer. So I think on average, it's about 72 to 1. So 72 applicants to one offer. That's approximately the ratio. I think there's a funnel on the next slide. But there's a lot of data around this. It's a few years old. Yeah. Almost 2 months to fill a software engineering role in the US and Canada. 40 candidates, qualified candidates apply. Again, this was a few years ago, so it's even higher now. And the amount of time that it takes to interview one candidate to get that hire, an average of about 13 interviews, and this is average. So even if every one of those interviews was an hour, which it's not, I would say 13 hours to spend with one person to make such an important decision is still not enough. And then retention. So even if you go through this interview process, you send out an offer, the retention rates are still not great. There's mishires that happen. People get through, or people get in, and then they realize, yeah, this is just not working out for. This is not what I thought it was going to be for whatever reason. Referrals, however, these are the standout, hero in this story. Referrals they do so much better. The one statistic that I like about referrals is they're 350% less likely to get terminated. Why are referrals so much better? I think it's simple, it's obvious. It's because they're known. It's someone who you know, someone who's been referred, right? So it's that personal experience with a person that makes referrals so much better, because a candidate presents, one side in their resume, one side during interviews, but how they do on the job could be slightly different. So even with referrals, they only make up 7% of all applicants. It's still not great. It doesn't make hiring, so much easier, although it does help. Finally, the high cost of the risk of making a mishire. So there was a study done that the author of Top Grading, Dr. Bradford Smart, he is smart. He did some research and found that the cost to replace someone who's mishired, so someone who's hired but they're not a good fit for the role, it is 5 to 27 times annual salary. So if you hire someone who makes 100,000, at minimum, you're spending $500,000 to replace that person. That is opportunity cost, lost time spent in recruiting, interviewing again. It is just enormous. So such an important decision left up to just a few hours with a person really is extremely high risk. So all of these together point to just a broken system, right? We've been doing this for so long. Companies spend a lot of effort into making their interview process rigorous, meticulous, based on data. Like Amazon did this really well. I learned how to interview a lot at Amazon, and still there is mishires. It's not perfect. And so we thought, okay, is there a better way? How do we make hiring a better experience for the candidate a better experience for hiring managers, take the risk out of this huge decision that is extremely high cost to make a risky decision on. And we think we've come up with a really good solution. So at IncrediHire, we pre-vet candidates. So we take candidates through a 6-week real-world program. They work on a real product, they ship the feature, and they work in a team. It simulates exactly what they would do on the job. And during that time, we work with them, we mentor, we help them deal with real world situations to be prepared to be successful on the job. We give them interview training, update their resumes. We really help them to really get that job and be successful at the job that they want. And we give them a performance evaluation at the end. And so what a hiring manager gets is an entire portfolio of work. It's like hiring an intern that used to work at that company, where you can talk to their previous manager, you see peer feedback, you see the work that they did, right? It's so much more than a resume, than 13 hours of interviews, right? It's what the person actually does on the job. And finally, the candidates that go through our program, we don't leave them once they're hired. We give them 90 days of career coaching. And those first 90 days, they are absolutely critical to be successful in any job. You're making first impressions, you are building your reputation, building trust. So that's a make it or break it period. If you can get through the first 90 days, high chances you're going to be very successful in that role. So for candidates, though, I want to stress we do simulate a real team. You get to work with others. It's not a personal project. It's not a project with just one or two other students in school or a capstone project. It's a real world. You're going to have to deal with deadlines. You're going to have to deal with collaborating with others, making decisions, prioritization. And these are the things that we assess your skills at and help you through. And finally, one thing that really differentiates us is how we partner with hiring companies. So the biggest advantage, I would say, is that graduates from our program are guaranteed interviews. We partner with hiring companies and we tell them, we're going to give you this portfolio. We're going to deliver high quality vetted candidates. And then for candidates who complete our program, we are matchmakers. We're the Tinder, Bumble of hiring. That doesn't sound right, but we really try to match you with the job that you deserve based on your skills and what you put into the program. So I wanted to open it up here to just hear from the panel, from guests about what your challenges are. We think we've tried to really address the top challenges of getting to the job that you know you deserve. But I'm wondering if there's something else, what your experience is.
Yeah, maybe throw your questions into chat and we can talk about them.
Yeah. Any questions folks have, please put them in the chat, or and also really interested in like finding out what are your top challenges. I've seen the Q&A today and the chat like just really lit up. So I think we talked about some of it, but any additional or any clarification? Does GPA matter? Eugene, thoughts?
I mean, let's put it this way. If you're a fresh college grad with absolutely nothing to put on the resume, well, that's actually a problem, right? Because if you're a fresh college grad and you don't have any college projects that you can really be proud of, it doesn't matter what your GPA is. That's going to be an issue in the interview. But let's assume that you have a couple college projects that you can really talk to. Yeah, at that point, like I would glance at the GPA. If I saw a 2.0, I might be a little bit concerned. But for me, the difference between 3.5 and 3.8 doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I would say if it's a really good GPA from a good school, it makes a difference. And put that on your resume. If you graduated top of your class, if you got accolades, if you're on the dean's list, anything that shows you worked hard and did really great, I'd put that on your resume. If you don't have a great GPA, don't put it on your resume. Don't break yourself into jail. Keep it, again, you are the hero of every phase and aspect of the entire interview process. Don't show the times when you were the villain. So it can make a difference. Use it with some discernment.
All right, looks like we have another one. As someone that's new to tech, is there any boot camps that you recommend? Boot camps versus colleges? I already have a college degree in another field, and I have a little coding practice, but building a couple of websites. This comes from Robert Johnson.
George, do you want to take it, or should I?
Yeah, sure. Robert, I love this question. I love that you're, working hard to get into tech. There's a lot of boot camps out there. There's a lot of online programs that you can take. I'll just be honest with you. My experience with boot camps is you get out what you put into them. They're not necessarily guaranteeing you, to get the job that you want. So it just shows that you're working on it. I think, what Ken talked about earlier about personal projects and going above and beyond, and that helps a little. But you need more than just boot camps. I think we actually have a really good program where we put people through what it's really like to work in the industry. So you need some core skills. We interview everyone before they get into the program. So you have to kind of pass that bar, but then it demonstrates how you do on the job. And I think the more experiences you have like that, the better your chances are. So the more you work with others on a significant project and deliver, that says a lot more than getting a certificate from a boot camp that you pay to get a certificate from. So it's kind of dubious. College degrees are a little bit more rigorous. I place a little more emphasis on that. But if I see someone who's constantly learning, certificate after certificate after certificate, and kind of builds up that track record, that's a positive sign, right? It's not like one or two of those alone is guaranteeing you a job, but it shows that you're constantly learning. And I wouldn't stop after you get a job either.
Cool. Awesome. A lot of questions coming in, but I think we can answer some of those. We'll come back to the questions live a little bit later, but if panelists, if you have time, you can hop on the Q&A section to answer questions. This is like the most interesting part, so I definitely don't want to stop that. But we already have I already have like 3-4 people who want to have their resumes looked at by this panel as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and transition. But before I do that, please, this is really helpful. If you could all take the poll. Your feedback is really important on the direction of this webinar, this series every Saturday. So please take a moment here to do that. And right after this, we'll get started on resume reviews. I think there was a really interesting, while we do that, maybe we can answer one more question live. Let's see. No, I don't.
I think the answer is a really good one. I was actually typing out the answer, but it might be better to just talk it out live.
Go for it.
So first of all, I would say, Dan, in my I understand the need to put up with a toxic environment in order to be able to put food on the table, and I'm sorry you are in that situation. That is difficult. I mean, in general, in a better job market, I would have said try to find a different job as quickly as you can, because life is too short to be dreading work. But in this job market, it is more difficult. In terms of how would you manage a program like ours, I'll get to the would you recommend your program question in a second. But in terms of how would you manage it, so the program currently requires 6 weeks at approximately 20 hours a week. So it is meant to be intensive. Whether you can manage that in combination with a full-time job, that's going to be a decision that you'll need to make, right? So a huge outcome of, or a huge factor of success in our program is the amount of energy you can put into it, right? So you're going to need to decide that. In terms of whether we would recommend it, I mean, basically at the end of the day, like what motivated us to start it and what motivated us to kind of try to develop it in the way that we've been developing it is helping folks such as yourself, and helping more early career folks. We actually have quite a few more senior folks in our program, for the cohort that's starting September 2nd, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. One of them is a guy I worked with for 15 years at Adobe. So the point is that there are multiple multiple levels of experience and multiple roles who are finding value in our program. I believe that it can help you in the sense that, assuming that you graduate from the program, you would have guaranteed interviews at the end of this, and you would have a big step forward in terms of your job search. But whether you are able to actually dedicate the time necessary, that's going to be a decision that you need to make.
Very, very true. These are tough decisions for yourself. You should look at every venue that's available to you, in order to, because I know, going back to like toxic situations, it's such a drain on you, on your mental health. But obviously putting food on the table, is a priority. So wishing you, Dan, wishing you a good, maybe this is a step back, but maybe it leads to 2 steps forwards for you down the line. All right. Poll has completed. Let's dive into resume reviews. Let's see here. Daniel, you are up first. All right, Daniel, can you hear me?
Hello, how are you guys? Thank you so much. It was actually super, super helpful, and informative. So I'll just share my screen here, and I'd appreciate any and all feedback. Here we go. I just have to allow screen sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. It says that I need to restart my Zoom to allow that. Would you?
Zoom strikes again. Yes, we have a couple of more folks. So, Daniel, just message me when you're back after you've given permission, and we'll go into the next one. But we look forward to seeing you in the
Yeah, thank you so
5
much.
minutes.
Sorry about that.
All right. Sounds good. Let's see here. So up next, if hopefully I'm saying this correct, Reina, are you ready? All right, Reina, can you hear us?
Hi, there's an option to join as panelist. Is this the right button to click?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
go
you
ahead and start the-
thank you for joining us. You want to share your screen, get some feedback on
Oh,
the
yes. And thank you for hosting this event. This has been really helpful so far. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and hope Zoom would allow me to do that. Okay, can everyone see this? And some
Yes.
information has been incognito, but most of the things I'm comfortable to share. And this is my resume so far, where I'm applying for mostly front-end engineer / software engineer / web developer, whatever title it is. I code mostly in JavaScript, React as a preference, but I did code in Ruby on Rails, .NET Core, because based on the job requirement, that my team need me to do this job, so I just jump in and do that, and I ended up learning a lot of different stacks. So yeah, I would appreciate any feedbacks and let me know if I need to scroll down.
Eugene, you wanna start us off on this one since you are, well, I mean, you are the front end expert here.
Oh, I don't know if I would call myself a resume expert, but I will do my best. So one thing that I've seen.
I did say front end expert, not necessarily resume.
All right, sounds good. So one thing that I have seen work really effectively in resumes is a quick objective section or a quick summary section, right? So basically, this is like 2-3 sentences about who you are, right, and what type of role you seek, right? Like I'm an experienced front end developer with knowledge of a couple core techs, like say React, ASP.NET or whatever, right? And I seek like a job in etc. And that section should be tailored to the role that you're applying for, right? If it's a healthcare role, like I'm super passionate about healthcare and I would love to get involved in this job, right? If it's a gaming, I'm an avid gamer and I would love to contribute on that front. So whatever the domain you're applying for, it's great to kind of slightly tailor that section to that domain. Think of it as a micro cover letter in a way.
Okay.
So that
would it be more effective than having a full cover letter in a resume? Is it like more preferable now for hiring manager to have a mini cover letter on the resume?
I would actually have both. So a authentic sort of heartfelt cover letter can be very effective, right? Basically, what a recruiter is looking for and what a hiring manager is looking for is a quick understanding of who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a cover letter can basically get that across in some ways more effectively than a resume. Like part of the reason why I say that I'm not a resume expert is as a hiring manager, I actually don't look at them all that closely. The reason is they tend to be a whole bunch of like jargony gobbledygook that I'm having to do a lot of mental acrobatics to understand and to map onto what I want. I don't have the time to do that for 250 people, right? So I'll typically just skim through the resume and kind of like, maybe I'll like my eye will catch on certain keywords like .NET, ASP.NET, MVC, great, right? 40% faster page load, that's good, right? Ruby on Rails 7, great. So I will kind of notice those things as I go through, but I'm not really going to think deeply about each bullet point that I see. However, a cover letter, if it's written in a very readable, sort of very, very natural language, that can engage me, right? And that also kind of gets across more of what your personality is like rather than just a collection of keywords.
Okay, yeah.
Other than that, I think it's great that you have, you have more bullet points here for the top job than you do for the lower jobs. That's exactly how you should do it. One question that I'm asking myself is if I look at the dates, it looks like the top one is from 2003, May 2003 to present. And then you have jobs that are April to August, February to April, August to December. And I'm just wondering, is it that you were working on multiple at the same time? Or like, why is there a date overlap?
If there's an overlap, that means I'm working on two jobs at the same time. So, for example, student publication is more like a part-time occupation for me, where we have weekly meeting. I just need to contribute to the project versus I might have like a full-time position. So I do something else on top of my full-time.
So
but yes,
that is,
if there's an overlap.
That is actually a great thing to put into the summary, right? So what that shows me is you're super passionate about your field, but make that really obvious, right? Like in addition to my full-time job, I've also been contributing to other projects, right? You don't have to list them out explicitly in the summary because again, like you want to keep it very short, but now that cues me up for when I see, the other job overlaps. Now I understand what they're about and why you were engaging into them. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, that makes sense.
Awesome.
And one more question. Oh, I don't know
Yeah.
if I still have time.
Please go ahead. Ask your
Just,
question.
and you probably can see like there's like content overflow for more than like one page where I'm trying to squeeze in the skill section, but I have like way too many content on my page. And if I add a personal summary, that can really buff up my resume even more. So it is still recommended to keep everything in one page.
I don't think that's necessary, but I would also
Okay.
say that, for example, let's say you're applying for a job at IMDb, right, as a
Okay.
consumer web team developer, right? In that situation, if you scroll up to your first job for a second, in that situation, develop and maintain WordPress websites integrated with AEM may not be quite as important, right? So you could
Yeah.
potentially leave that out, right? So in other
Yeah.
words, like you can remove some of the bullet points depending on what specific job you're applying for, and really
Okay.
stress some of the others. And there are some really good sites like TLHQ that let you upload your resume, upload the job rec that you're looking for, and it'll tell you what the ATS match is going to be. And what you'll want is kind of massage your resume to have an ATL match above around 90%. Right. At that point, you're
Sounds good.
getting through the applicant tracking system that we talked about in the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. It's really, really helpful, Eugene. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Reina, for being brave going first. I do appreciate it. All right. I think, oh, give me 1 second here. Just trying to navigate. Okay. Daniel looks like he's ready. Let me promote him to panelist. George, is it okay if you let Daniel share his screen since he went through the trouble of enabling it? Hey, Daniel.
Oh, I'm back. Here we go. I think, okay, here we go. Looks like it's gonna work. So share that. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So, I just, I am in my last year or last semester as a computer science student. And I primarily work in like lower end systems, so systems programming. I spend a lot of time in C and C++. I'm working on my own compiler right now as sort of a showcase project, which I think should be really interesting. So it's a little long, but it sort of keeps everything. Just from what you guys have said, I think this section I have here, I'm gonna translate to irrelevant projects just to make it a little more I don't know, specific towards what I'm looking for. But yeah, I would appreciate any and all feedback, and we can go through the whole thing.
Yeah, Daniel, first up, since you're in the process of graduating, your resume at 3 pages,
Yeah,
I would just say it's way too long.
way too long. Yeah.
For you specifically, it's way too long. You want to preferably when you're and probably I'm sure if you asked um, your university, they would probably tell you the same. You preferably want it in a single page.
Single page.
But if you have a lot of cool things, it's okay to go up to 1.5 page, but be really mindful of what's on that first page versus
Yeah.
what's on that second page. Right now, having so again, same advice as Eugene gave. Maybe you want to check out tlhu.com.
Yeah.
If there's a recommended format from your university, you may want to check that out because you have a lot of white space here, like your education details. Again, great to put a good GPA on there, but it's just taking. I think all the information you have can probably fit in 1 to 1.5. Just taking a lot of real estate. TLHQ will help you take a lot of that mystery out of how to format your resume in a way where everything can fit in 1 page, hopefully, but 1.5 page. That's like the first thing that pops out to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's definitely a lot of cutting down I can do.
Yeah. And going back to the previous advice, you are targeting technical
Yes.
positions?
Yes, absolutely. That's yeah.
So as you can see, you will right on this first page, I don't see any of that highlighted. I see the GitHub link, which is great, fantastic. So if you want to scroll down to the second.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so most of my technical skills, and again, these need to get cut down, but I'm fairly comfortable with all of these. I'm not really putting anything on there that I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about or sort of illustrating my understanding of, at least at a, beyond a basic level.
Yeah. And these, again, these would be this kind of verbiage, I would say, is okay to put in some sort of like cover letter, but
Okay.
from a resume perspective, this is way too low down the line. You want to highlight projects. You want to highlight, you want to talk about, you want to demonstrate, you want to put projects on your resume that highlight these things, as opposed to saying, getting very verbose with robust understanding, underlying logic that allows a computer to compile and physically.
Yeah.
That the interviewer knows. So your
They know
resume
machines.
does. Yeah. So
No,
again,
go ahead. I was just sort of reiterating. Sorry.
yeah, totally. And again, super brave of you to come and volunteer, but this is why you're doing it, and this is great. You're showing great awareness. So your resume needs a fair amount of work, but don't lose the spirit that you created in. Like I love reading this stuff, but find a way to move this to to cover letters, find a way to put in like projects that demonstrate that, as opposed to these are unqualified statements in the sense of a project that you achieve something with assembly or Rust. It will be just much more effective. So I love the spirit here. But your resume does need a fair amount of work. So I would say that. And I see Eugene unmuted.
If I can add a couple of quick points. First of all, the summary section that we discussed could really help you here, because like, dude, you're writing a compiler as a hiring manager. Like, that's freaking cool, right? That's what I want to see right there at the top.
Okay.
Writing my own compiler. Right? That's awesome, right? So the thing is, one, you want to really tailor the resume to the job you're applying to. For example, again, let's say you're applying to consumer web team at IMDb. The fact that you have a robust understanding of assembly language, I could care less.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Like that's completely inapplicable, right? Same thing with LLVM. Like, that's awesome, but I don't care, because like I want somebody who knows React Native. Right? Now, if you're applying for, like, let's say a 3D game engine position, right? Assembly language, awesome, put that in.
Yeah.
Very likely applicable, right? Rust, awesome. C++, awesome. So the point is, like, put in the skills that you have, only the subset of the skills that are directly applicable to the job you're applying for.
So maybe make 2, 3, 4 versions of this that sort of target specific parts of the tech stack.
Well, I would actually say make a specific version per job, right?
Okay.
For every job you're applying for. And this is actually where sites like Teal, and Teal is not the only one, there are a bunch of others. And for the sake of clarity, we are not affiliated with Teal in any way. It's just, this is something that we use ourselves, or I use myself. Teal is actually pretty convenient for that. Like, you can import as many job racks as you want, and you can create a tailored version of your resume specifically for that job rack.
Okay.
So yeah, I would use something like that. There are a bunch of others too. Resume Worded, I think, is another one that do the same sort of stuff. So I would really do that. But the thing that you really want to stress again is, what is the really cool stuff that you've been doing?
Okay.
Like writing my own compiler, right?
Yeah, highlight that.
Make sure the hiring managers like see that first.
Okay. All right, I will absolutely do that.
Awesome. Very cool, Daniel. Thank you again for volunteering first, but going second. So hopefully you got some good information.
No, that was really helpful. Thank you all so much.
Really awesome. That's why we're here. Thank you for your kind words. Awesome. George, you want to share the next one, and I will give them permission to speak. And help me with your first name's pronunciation. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How do you say your first name? I don't want to say it wrong.
Hi, I'm Josue Castellanos.
Jose, awesome. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank
George,
you guys for this great info session and for allowing me to share my resume.
Yeah, George, can you for 1 second stop sharing and make it like a default presentation view? Right now you're in the um, in that modified view for the presentation.
You guys don't want to see my face? I'm
We,
offended.
we're very jealous of your beard. Okay, Joshua, over to you. Tell us, did you have any specific questions, or should we begin with some feedback on your resume?
Oh yeah, just some feedback for my resume. I think the hardest part for me right now is uh passing these AI tools, having at least a callback or an interview. That would be, I think, my biggest issue. I've applied several places, I mean, not more than several places, and it's hard for me to uh get an interview.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the, take some of the things that the Eugene and Ken specifically talked about, take those to heart to like, especially what Ken talked about, like standing out, super important because there's a lot of qualified candidates, especially uh, new or recent grads. So there's a lot of that. So you are definitely trying to get through the noise. Resume is a good place to start, right? Because it all focuses on getting an interview, getting your name in front, but check
Yes.
out those sections as well. Um, with that, George, you have any thoughts on like Joshua's resume, what he can do to help?
Yeah, hey Josue, thanks for volunteering. I think you're at the park with your kid right now. I'm jealous.
Yes, that's
There,
correct.
that's awesome. Um, yeah, a few things about your resume. Um, so you graduated from a good school. The 3.4 GPA, it's okay. Yeah, you could keep that on there. I like that you have the awards very concisely listed. That's awesome. So I usually look at, for new grads, I look at education. I just glance at it. Um,
Mhm.
so you've got awards. That's awesome. That means you work hard and you excel at hard things. Cool.
Yes.
I usually skip skills, relevant coursework, but for someone who's just starting off, I think that's fine. Leave it on there. Um, your national laboratory, your first and third bullet points are great. The mentor, unless this is like a world-renowned, PhD person,
Yes.
just oh, okay, then yeah, leave that on there. Um, if not, I'm not in that field, so that
Okay.
you taking up space for me. But your third bullet point's great because it's got a metric on here. You say how much you increased efficiency. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I love seeing outcomes. So
Oh, perfect.
that's well done. Um, the rest are just okay. I'd actually say even the last one, I would reword this. So 1 minute pitch, I would take out a 1 minute pitch.
Okay.
1 minute, yeah, it takes work to make something in very concise. I don't have that skill. I'm very glib. Words just keep coming out when I start talking. But 1 minute is really short.
Yes.
But 80 attendees, yeah, it's not bad. So again, make yourself the hero in your resume here. So
Okay.
presented outcomes to 80 and list who they are, right? Like PhD or like candidate, PhD students or experts in the like whoever they are.
Yes.
Um, yeah, garnering for senior research. Maybe there's a better way to phrase that one. It's nice that you got, but for senior researchers, again, if this is like an industry thing that's going to wow people in your industry, cool. If not, I think you can rephrase it.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, and I would take George's feedback like on the if you look at it like it just feels like it's an essay
Yes.
as opposed to highlighting impact important things for the hiring manager or the recruiter who's looking at this. So I would start to look at your resume from that perspective and especially that first section because also remember it's on top of your on top of your list. It has
Yes.
to be the highest impact thing. So you have to rework and I would definitely follow rework this section and I would definitely follow George's example because you have some really you're keeping things much tighter as you go into the software project section.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Some more about your projects. The first one's interesting. I trade options. I like to invest. So I'm very interested in this 90% ROI over manual trading. I'm going to ask you about this if I'm interviewing you, okay? And I want
Yes.
tips. But if you could tell me more what 90% means, like over manual trading, does that just mean like it's faster to respond than a human does? Then that's not as impressive. But
Mhm.
if it actually generated better returns in a certain way. So I think there's probably a way to make that
Okay.
more impressive, like because this is something I actually understand in your resume now.
Yeah.
So tell me why it's more significant.
Cool.
Okay. I definitely see that now. Yes, that is really helpful information because I didn't really specify, but I used it to demonstrate how I remove the emotions from trading and how faster it is to execute these trades.
So
And
fast.
the overall returning on investment since I apply these changes.
Okay. Yeah, so that kind of validates my assumption that it was just faster than a human. In that case, I think that's fine. Cool project. Also, I don't see dates next to these projects. If they were really short, don't put the dates. But
Okay.
if they were over, a few months,
Oh,
and if you did these over 2 years or 3 years,
yes.
you would build a track record of constantly working on cool projects, right? Then that's
Yeah.
cool. But if each one of these was a weekend project and you did it over 3 months, like over a summer, a little less impressive. You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
like, I think you can use dates to your advantage here. So don't use them to your disadvantage. You know what I mean? So that's one thing.
Yeah, I think that's really good feedback. And the other one is just, for everybody, just keep in mind, like use the 6 second rule to grab attention. Make sure there's, especially the top part of your resume, for 6 seconds, somebody's looking at it. There's something that is related to the job you're applying for, to the company you're applying to, that grabs their attention. Um, and yeah, like the dates are super important. The other thing I would say is if you have links to these projects, add these links to those projects. That would have been just a great one. Somebody sees it. You're not going to put it all in your resume. They can look at the code, look at the details. You can put it on the README of the GitHub. So we do have to keep moving
Yes, I
on.
guess I just have one quick question. So I have links to all my projects. However, I have them set up as hyperlinks. Would it be better to have the actual URL link displayed instead of a hyperlink?
Uh,
Um,
Use that judiciously. Yeah, like if it just clutters up because now I click on them and now I see. I didn't notice
Yes.
that they were underlined at first. So if it clutters up your resume too much, I would say no. But maybe highlight it. You can also just say like in parentheses link and make that the link, right?
Mhm. Okay.
A bit more obvious, but it's not the full URL. I think that's better to do actually.
I just have one last quick question for George. Would you give can you provide me another idea to add to my bullet as a bullet point instead of having um what I have so far?
No, I'm
Okay.
just kidding. Yeah, man, I'll message you. I got your LinkedIn. I'll message you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
awesome. I know we're out of time. George, we have one more. Should we wrap up, or did you want to do that one as well?
Let's help one more person. I could stay a little longer.
All right, one more, and George has the resume. And for those, we'll schedule another one next Saturday. So follow us on, and we want to help as many people as we can. There's a limited time to do it. So one more, George, go ahead and share. And I'm not sure if I am saying their name correctly, but I'll ask.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I don't know if this person wants to be anonymous or not. So
Okay, I'll
No,
be
no.
quiet then.
I was just like, hello.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
can.
can hear you. How do you say your first name? we'll if you want to
G.
remain anonymous, we can take it out later.
No, I'm all good with
Yeah.
being known. So first name is Yi, like to yeeting something, you know?
Oh, Yeegit. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Love
but
it.
the G is silent.
Okay. Yi, got it. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Yi. Here's the, let's look at the resume. George, can you scroll up a little bit? Beautiful. I mean, first impression looks very, very clean. Looks like you're using like an established template. Looks like a template that's used a lot of at Mang and Fang companies. So I like it. It's very clean, very easy to read.
Thank you.
Um,
So like I have a question. So like
Go ahead.
for my experience, I have like worked on a company for remote. So like should I display it in there or should I just like remove it?
I'm sorry. So you
What's the
have work
question?
experience where you're asking whether you should mark whether it's remote or not?
Yeah, it's like you see, like Bunny Media, it says like remote, but for the Florence specialty coffee, it's like it says hybrid.
Mhm. Yeah,
So like should I leave it
I
or
would just leave that out. I don't think it's an important detail.
Mhm.
I see some George, right? I see some good impact statements here. Any thoughts there? In the experience, leading to a 15% increase in user engagement by improving overall user experience. That looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, I like it. Yes, absolutely. You'd be surprised how many people don't do this, and you've done it for a few of these. Awesome. I think it's great.
Yeah.
These type of resumes make me want to talk to a person who has these kind of outcomes and impact, right? Because you've done something, right? Like you actually this now I want to hear about it. So good job. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
I think it's a clean resume. You've put some work into this. It takes effort to actually make it concise and impactful. Um,
Yeah, I would actually you move the now that I mean perhaps you came up with this now that you have experience, I would move your experience up above education.
Mhm.
Given that you have good experience, good impact mixed in there, like George just pointed out, I would just perhaps the one tweak I would make is move experience above education. Again, it's for that impact. You could also move it to the very bottom. It doesn't. It's when you do have enough experience, like it matters less when you're like when you're a recent grad, whether it's boot camp or college, it makes sense to put it up there. But now you can start to move it down.
Yeah, I'm a recent grad, but I was like self-taught at first, and then like I went to a boot camp, but at the same time I was still like so the first work I did for Florence Specialty Coffee is a volunteer work. So I was building their website without like getting paid. But at the same time, I was attending to a boot camp at the same time.
yeah. Yeah, I like this resume a lot. And sure you can like kind of tweak a little, optimize a few things in there. The one thing that I do notice that would make me pause is you have about 1 year really worth of experience, right? And so I could tell you're just starting out, but you've got a lot of it, and your resume shows what you've done in that 1 year. It's good.
Mhm.
Um, given how tough the market is right now, um, just set your expectations. It's going to be hard to get the first few interviews, but continue on this path, right? Like you're building up trends. And this is what I like to see as a hiring manager is not someone who spent the summer, looking into computer science and now wants to make, $250,000 a year. I want to see someone who's passionate about this, who just loves doing this, right? And I love hearing that you volunteered to build a website. Awesome. Just set your expectations. You might have to do a few more of these, right? And don't give up. So you make an impact everywhere you go. That's awesome. You continue your education. Stay on this and build up more of that experience, that track record that makes me say, okay, this guy is serious. I want to talk to Yi, not just about his music, but also about his passion for building things. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. We were talking about the rapper, right?
yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think that's the only thing I would say, but it's not really much something you can change about your resume. It looks good, man. It's rare that I look at a resume and I say, huh, yeah, actually it looks good. So you've spent some time on this and it shows. It shows that you care, shows that you spent time on something. So it just tells me about something about you that it takes effort to make a resume like this. You put in that effort. And so I know something a little about you already. This is very positive, very good. Continue on it. And I think, our program might be something that you might be interested in. Like I mentioned, we take people through a 6-week real world program where you work on a real product with a group of people and you deliver a feature. And we give you a lot of coaching, feedback, prepare you for interviews, and then we partner with hiring companies to get you interviews once you graduate. So I think you're a really good candidate. You're someone who works hard at what they do. You're building up your experience, and you need more of that experience. So that's something that you should look into.
Thank you so much. I have like one question,
Yeah,
which
we
is
have time for one more question. Please go for it.
okay. Thank you so much. So the brainwave AI, it says in my projects, I built that, but the thing is, it requires a user registration, and it's just like I think it is one of my like biggest projects that I ever built. Right now, it's not hyperlinked, but it's on like it's published. Should I like remove the user registration to like showcase my project, or should I just leave it there?
I'm
Yeah,
not sure I follow, but you should provide if um this is a project that you created, and it's live on the web,
Yeah,
and you should definitely put a link to it. Obviously, if the source code you want to keep to yourself, you don't have to put the source code, but if the product's already out there on the web, definitely put a link to it. That's also pretty impressive. So another thing that Eugene was saying, maybe it's helpful for you to put some sort of summary, maybe not, but I would definitely put a link to that project here. That would be
yeah.
fantastic.
The reason why I didn't put it is because I recently finished it and I recently like done everything. And I was thinking about like before put a link there, I wanted to like publish it on LinkedIn so that like get some attraction, like more attraction from people. And then maybe like after that, maybe I can put a link.
yeah, man, put a link. Yeah, I like putting links
Put a
when-
link now. Don't hold back.
Yeah, just do
I
it.
think that the brainwave AI is going to speak for itself. Um, Definitely do the other things on the side that you're doing to promote it, like on LinkedIn. Develop a brand around it. Great, but the website speaks for itself. Put a link on there.
Yeah. Same
So
with
like
Learn Specialty Coffee. If it's a nice website that you're proud of, put it on there.
so like that website is like they shut it down because they changed the um so the manager they kind of work right now they're working with another company and they just wanted to shut it down. um so right now it's not up, but it was a project that I did for
Yeah,
them.
totally. That makes sense. You don't need to put it up there if it wasn't. But if you do own some of that code, you can obviously put it in your GitHub repository. So Yi, thank you so much um, for going, for talking to us today. It was awesome to look at your resume. It's also awesome to just see how many talented folks are out there. And again, the goal remains, why do we do this or anything else? We want to connect great companies with great people. So this was fantastic. This was awesome. We went way over, but looks like everybody got a lot out of it. We're going to be back next Saturday. Check out the meetup, the LinkedIn for when the next one is. I don't remember exactly when our next one is. But I'm going to assume it's next Saturday. We'll do that. Thank you so much, George. Thank you so much for sticking it out till the end. I'm sure folks got a lot out of it. Everybody, have a good weekend, Labor Day weekend, right? Chance to celebrate everybody, you know, who contributes to this society, to labor, to work. So be sure to spend some time with your family as well. But thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. Bye, y'all.